Hey, I'm Derek.
And I'm Noah, and you're listening to A Bite Of,
where we take our current favorite pop culture obsession and enjoy it one nibble at a time.
Ooh, I hope you guys subscribe to the Goldbug subscription box.
Where you can get beauty essentials made just for you.
Only you.
Just you. Give us your blood.
Final part of the fall of the House of Usher. Mike Flanagan's last series on Netflix. And this is our second and last part, covering episodes 5 through 8. To the end. We have, speechless.
Feelings. So many feelings.
So before we get into everything, make sure you're following us on all socials, because that's where we're at. It'll make us very happy. You know, it'll make our telltale hearts beat and beat and beat. We also are on our way to 200 reviews, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So if you haven't thrown stars our way yet, if you like what we're doing with Mike Flanagan stuff, just let us know. Throw us stars. Give us those. And that's it.
Okay. Well, spoiler alert. If you don't want to be spoiled on the last 4 episodes of The Fall of the House of Usher, I would suggest maybe putting us on pause and coming back later.
Yeah. And we're going to be spoiling the works that it's based on, the whole series as a whole. So don't get spoiled. Meow.
Yeah. Don't be like the milk that's sitting in your fridge for far too long. Yeah. Curdled and spoiled.
Don't be like one of the Usher kids. Very spoiled.
Very spoiled. Let us officially take a bite of The Fall of the House of Usher, episodes 5 through 8.
Woo! Okay, so how we're going to do this is, instead of, because it's Mike Flanagan, right? And this is very much in the vein of Bly Manor, where it goes future, past, blah, blah, blah. We're going to just focus on the kid that dies in the episode, and then at the end, wrap it all up with Verna. That way we're not being like, okay, young Roddy and Madeline and Annabelle are doing this. We know.
Yeah, you don't need to hear us describe every 1970s kitchen scene that happens.
Very good. I love them.
The acting is fantastic, but it took a while to get where we wanted to go.
Yeah, and we can just be like, they did this, and it's fine.
Exactly.
This is how we feel about it. So before going into the first death of this episode, how do you feel about the series now? Not necessarily your spoilers on overall, but like, how did you feel after our first chunk and then after we watched this chunk?
I learned something about myself while watching this series, that I love watching evil people get murdered. Really, like, at the end of every episode, I could not wait to see them die. I wanted to know how they died, how it was based on the story, and I wanted to see their evil story come to an end. That made me very happy. Bold claim, maybe feeling like this is my favorite of the Netflix Flaniverse.
That is insane.
Is it?
Yeah, personally, for like what I know about you, yeah, I feel like that's crazy.
Mama, good prevails. Okay. You know that's how I roll.
All right. At the end, we'll do our like official, like where we place this in our likings of Flanagan. I really enjoyed it. I think the first half I liked, but I needed the second half to really catch me and for it all to come together. And I feel like it did that. And I loved that the series just crescendoed.
Right.
Every episode surprisingly just got better and better with the series. And I really enjoyed that. And I also feel like the writing just kept getting better and better as we got towards the end. I don't know. It's just that Flanagan magic.
Yeah, it really was. The tension kept cranking up as the episodes went on. I do feel like with the first 4 episodes, especially 2, 3, and 4, those felt incredibly formulaic. It felt like, here's this kid, here's how they die. And we didn't get much more than that. But I think because we got to stay with Vic and Tamerlane and Fraudrick a little longer than the others, we got to see their stories really progress and got to know the character a little more and see why they were a little more evil than the other ones. So the payoff at the end felt like we kind of earned it a little more.
And it was also tying everything together. So I think that satisfaction of like, okay, yes, this theory was right. Or, oh, I didn't think of that. It just made it a full package deal.
It was very well crafted.
Okay, so let's talk about episode 5.
Yes, episode 5 is The Telltale Heart. So Dr. Ruiz finds out that Vic forged her signature on official documents for the trial, throwing the couple into a tailspin. As Vic tries to get her back on board, she is haunted by their tumultuous final moments. Roderick visits Vic and discovers her in an unstable state. A mechanical metronome ticks, telling the tale of Vic's broken heart.
We have to post these like summaries of the episodes because I really like what you wrote for these ones. It's kind of like the series. It just got better.
That's very kind of
as
you.
the
Thank
summary
you.
went. So this one I was most excited for. I think, the Telltale Heart is very, everybody loves it, right?
Yeah,
it's that
it's
one
a famous one.
Yeah, it's like the Raven in this one. But I really wanted to see how Flanagan was going to do it. And I thought he did such a cool job of modernizing it, but still giving that, like, I don't know, the overwhelming guilt and that what is happening and the tension and the paranoia. He did really well. The people that are married to these Usher kids, I feel so bad for them. Every single one of them gets the shit end of the stick. Every single one.
The interesting thing is we see these Usher kids sort of at their utmost evil, but to get these other people on board and in their lives and in their bedrooms and as married or whatever the state of their relationship is, these other people have to see some good in them.
Yeah, I think this one, so the fight that Alessandra and Vic have in here, she plainly tells her, like, I thought you were different, but you're no better than the rest of them. And I think that's true. I think personally, I held out hope that she was going to be somewhat better, or maybe she was going to loop her in at some point and not loop her in that, oh, by the way, you have a surgery scheduled for tomorrow on a human trial that was nowhere near ready to happen. I'm glad that Alessandra stood up to her. Unfortunately, that was to her demise, but hey, she like flat out told her to her face. She was like, no, like, I'm done with this. I'm not helping you. I'm out.
It was nice to see someone stand up to an Usher kid because especially in the, Built Tamerlane relationship, Built is just an accessory to her madness. And
wow,
so,
you sound just like Tam.
Bill, you were handpicked.
So fucked up.
She's such a bitch. But in this case, yes, it was really nice to see someone stand up to Vic. But unfortunately, at that point in time, Vic had already crossed the threshold from we're in this together to do what I say. And I think that, especially in this case, if you threaten an Usher kid on their goal or try and take it away from them, they can't handle that.
Right.
Whether it's the fame, the fortune, whatever it is, if you are threatening to undo it, they retaliate. And we really do see that with Vic and Alessandra.
And in like the most extreme ways too. And I think Vic's character is very interesting because not only is she, to use their term, a bastard like most of the other Usher kids, she's also one of the older ones. And she has the burden of trying to show her father, like, I can do this for you. I'm going to make you proud no matter what. But she also she's not qualified to be doing what she's doing. And I think that's something that we see with a lot of these Usher kids is that, even Leo, he doesn't make video games. He just supplies the money. So it would be wrong to even be like, that's a gaming developer or that's somebody that makes them. It's not true. So most of these people aren't really good at what they do or aren't exactly what they say they do, right? Because even Roderick, okay, yeah, he came up with Ligodome, but he stole the company from somebody else. So it's just like, and none of them are actually who they are, and they try to appear a certain way. And I love this episode of like Vic still trying to act like everything's okay after she killed her and the heartbeat. And she can't focus on anything else but that heartbeat. And it was so cool to see. I loved the conversation that Madeline and Vic have in the office. And even though Madeline is like trying to go into like scramble mode and get everybody together, Vic just can't pay attention because that guilt is constantly in her head. Oh, so good. And it wasn't a heartbeat. It was just the the noise of the machine that they made, and it sounded so gross.
Yes, it feels like when they could use squishy bodily effects in this, they did. They wanted you to hear blood pumping, muscle squirming, things squelching underneath people's feet, and we have that throughout this. And that was, again, the excitement of this series is really getting to see how Flanagan takes the original Poe tale. And so in the original Poe tale, it's very interesting. The narrator is the murderer, and there's this old man who was very nice to him, but he has a milky eye that he can't stand. And so he spends a week staring at the moonlight on his eye in the middle of the night, and then one day kills him. And then is like really keeping it cool for the most part until the police come, and he just loses it because he can hear the heart underneath the floorboards. And so there is that aspect in this of the madness and then them sort of giving themselves up in the end, not being able to handle that guilt.
She really did a good job, Tanaya Miller. Fantastic job of, for most part, playing it cool. At the beginning of this episode, we see her, Fraudrick, and Tamerlane kind of meet. And we didn't really get to see a lot of these siblings meet like this until the end, the last three. But the fact that it's like Fraudrick and Tamerlane are so much like Madeline and Roderick, to where Fraudrick will just side with Tamerlane. Mm-hmm. Because in the beginning of their conversation, they're kind of like, we need to come together. And, Vic is like, isn't this the time that families come together? I thought this was what we're supposed to do. And Tamerlane's like, no, like I have this business to do. We need to get over this, blah, blah, we need to do this. And he just goes along right with it. So it's like, that was the one opportunity where they could have come together, these last three. And as we see, Verna all gives them a choice. She gives them all the choice, and they could have probably survived in some way, but they had to talk shit to Vic.
And I think that this shows really that true fissure between the quote true Usher kids and the bastards, because for a very long time, the bastards, there were more bastards than there were Usher kids.
And now there's not.
Now it's just Vic. So Vic is pretty much on her own and is now seen, as always, as less than the other two. It is interesting to me that, again, like, even though Frederick is older, Tamerlane still is the one in control.
Just like the brother and sister.
Yes, they are pawns in their sister's games, and wherever square they are told to move to, that is where they go.
I mean, I do have to say that both Madeline and Tamerlane have a presence about them. Like, they are very commanding, and I can't help but be captivated every single time.
They have talking. The power.
Yeah. Quick note, I did want to say, so the Roderick and Augie scenes that we get when they're talking in the room, really in this episode, the only thing of note is we just had to wait one more episode to find out that there was no informant.
You were right, Mr. Noah.
I had that feeling. I was like, I love Augie, but I don't think he's above not lying to get what he needs.
I was thinking about it, and it seems like he is willing to lie in order for justice to be served.
Which, okay, I feel like with these type of people, I'm okay with.
Of course.
But like, do it normally to like coerce like confessions and stuff, not okay. But I feel like with the Ushers, go ahead.
But in a way, what he set out to do by saying there was an informant, he said, I wanted it to eat you up from the inside.
Not kill, but...
Well, that's not on him. That's on Verna and the deal, baby.
I do like that he had guilt about it, right? And he apologized to Roderick. He's like, I didn't know that they would start dying one after another, which, fair. Why would anybody assume that? But with the body count behind Roderick, I think he probably should have thought about it a little more. But I think he had his own vengeance set out. Of
course. Yeah. I mean, he was completely double-crossed by the Usher children. So I think it was no holds barred for Augustine in these moments. I do want to say that one problem I do have with this series is that we never get to meet Dupon's husband.
Or the kids.
Yeah.
I think on the last episode, I was like, where's his husband? Like, hello.
You know what? I guess we should just be grateful that he made it out alive.
I guess. It's fine. Yeah.
But let's talk about our final moments with Vic. And I
Wait, before we go, one more thing that like happens outside of the kids' den. They're connecting Verna with the murders and everything. And the Pim Reaper brings in all these photos, and it shows the photo that Leo took of Verna at the adoption agency. And she was never holding a cat. She was holding a rat. And also the shelter was like dilapidated. So that was spooky. And I love those type of details, but it just shows that it was all a facade and it was supposed to happen the way it did.
Well, very much like the bar. The bar was never there. It was just a dilapidated building. Listen, Verna's got real estate in the tri-state area. She can do whatever she wants.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved that as well. And we again start to see this interesting thing where Madeline is putting the pieces together of what happened that New Year's.
Well, she believes it more than
she
Roderick.
believes it, right?
Yeah.
Where Roderick is so...
Denial.
He's in denial, but it's so interesting because Roderick, when he's having these like kind of soliloquy moments, these monologue moments by himself, he's spinning in madness and he is losing it and he is leaning into the fact that this might be happening. But when he's in front of Madeline and Pim, he can't seem to lower that defense.
Well, I think it might have to do with his condition, right? So I think that's something that we have to consider whenever he's like, when he's seeing some things. Like, granted, I think Verna is messing with him or there's something going on with him, but I think there is that extra layer of he is seeing hallucinations and he is losing his mind with his actual condition. And in this episode specifically, we have a really cool scene where he talks about it's just 10 seconds and he can save them all, meaning that he's in his office and he's like talking about all the ways that he can kill himself, and he grabs that weapon and he puts it on the wall and puts it on his stomach and he's like, I can just walk right into this. Or one of my favorite scenes in this is when he talks about it's just 10 seconds to hit the ground from falling 70 stories. And the background just moves with him as if he's falling. Oh, it gave me Dr. Sleep vibes, and I loved it so much. But I really, really like these Roderick monologues by himself because we get a few of them towards the end of the series, and they're just the thing that makes Mike Flanagan's writing perfection.
Yeah. In that scene where he's talking about, 70 seconds to fall, 10 seconds, I was like, this could be a ride at like Universal.
Absolutely. I don't want, nope.
Riding through all of their deaths.
No, thank you.
Oh my gosh, you're going through a heart. What does that mean? Yeah,
No,
I think
you.
it would be so fun.
It's going to be in Baltimore.
It's going to be right next to the Poe Museum.
Yeah. Okay. So Vic's final moments, right? I think they did a good job of editing this to where you're not too sure what happened. You can kind of figure it out, but turns out she threw the bookend at Alessandra's head. This scene, there was a few hard to watch scenes in this, but I think this episode specifically with Vic and Alessandra is just so hard to watch because you also see the cruelty of Vic. Like she's desperate and she's scared and she's like, what am I doing? She's going to call the cops. And then she doesn't while her wife's head is just bleeding out on the floor. And then she doesn't call the cops. And then when the bodyguard is like, is everything okay? And she's like, have you never heard a girl eat somebody out before? And it's like, you are deranged.
Yeah, this was incredibly hard to watch, especially for, I think a lot about when characters die in a specific way. If they are talking to doctors or seeing or watching videos to see how a person dies from blunt force trauma to the head, because this part with Alessandra was so unsettling, watching her twitch, watching her be somewhat aware of what was going on and not being able to be helped. It was like stomach churning for me to watch. It felt very uncomfortable.
It was one of the hardest ones to watch. Even like the actor, the way she did her eyes, I was just like, I love horror, but like there's some instances, and I think we needed this, right? We needed that, like, how cruel can these people be? And we needed to kind of hate them. And did a very good job.
Yeah.
I was not expecting in the end for Roderick to come in. And at first when she was asking people, do you hear that? Do you hear that? And nobody heard it. But when Roderick is in her place and he's like, yeah, I hear that. What is that? And I was like, wait, are they like sharing this like delusion or like what's happening?
And then he's like, what's that smell?
Oh, Vic opened up Alessandra and just has her chest open and the device is still keeping her heart pumping. And it's so incredibly awful. But the like madness that you see with Vic in those final moments where Roderick is like trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? How do we figure this out? And Vic is like, no, it's fine. It's fine.
It works. See?
It works. Look, like, are you happy? Are you proud of me? And then she kills herself. It's so, I wasn't sure how they were going to do the murder suicide with this one. And now I know, and I'm sad.
Yeah, well, that, you know, the suicide part of this is like the part of the post story of the murderer just telling the police, I did it. He's under the floorboards. He gives himself up. And in that same sense, that's Vic giving herself up. And, you know, one of the things that was really apparent in this, which you had pointed out to me, is the use of color.
Yes.
And we really got to see that Vic was red in this.
She had changed too, so like gradually, especially in the office whenever she was looking for the heartbeat. I feel like this half of the series, it really showed you the colors. And like any time that like Verna or like their ultimate choices were made, I'm still not too sure on like when the colors come in, what does it mean? Or is it just to give that added effect? But that part where like it goes down to that orangish red. And then when like, I think Madeline or somebody comes in and it goes back up to regular color without that, that's just so cool. It's such a smart use of like just setting that scene and giving each one of them that color. Still don't know what the colors mean. I don't want to necessarily say they're the 7 deadly sins, but maybe they just have a color palette.
Yeah. I mean, that could possibly be it. You or this. It's like Power Rangers. It's just, it's like, who's the Pink Ranger?
They're like the opposite version of Power Rangers.
Totally. You know, the Poe Rangers. I think that it is interesting, though, that Roderick walks into this room, sees what his daughter has done, watches his daughter kill herself, and then still leads his life.
Yeah, they're all awful.
It's just so insane.
I think in the end, I expect that of him, but leading up to the ending part, I'm just like, dude, like I can see there's some moments of Roderick where he's grieving his children and he's so incredibly sad about it, but like his choices and the things that he keeps doing, I'm like, you just like, I don't like you. You're amazing in your monologues, but like, shut up. Grieve your kids.
Shut up.
Okay, so Vic is gone. We have 2 more kids left. Let's get into episode 6.
All right, episode 6 is Goldbug. The launch of the luxury Goldbug subscription box is the only thing that can hold Fortunato together. Without any sleep, its star, Tamerlane, begins to lose moments of her life. At the disastrous press conference, Juno is on the heavy end of a mic drop, and Madeline rushes through the crowd to grab the haunting Verna. Tammy's dreams shatter around her, and piece by piece she breaks apart, coming to her final rest.
Ooh. This, I want to say, is probably one of my favorite episodes out of the series. I think it is, everybody's at play here. We get some little snippets of like Pym the Reaper, but I think Tamerlane's ultimate demise is so fucking cool. I loved it.
Yes. I was thinking back to our last episode when you said, which one is your favorite death? And I couldn't really pick one. I think I ended up picking Perry. Tamerlane is my favorite. It was so beautiful. It was so gorgeously shot. It was so dramatic with her just fiery red hair flowing around her as the mirrors fell. I was like, yes, queen.
In this particular episode, I really liked the play with her falling asleep, or at least her blackout moments.
Same.
I thought the editing was really, really good. And it was interesting that whenever, when she's talking to Bilt or whenever she's having these conversations and she's actually opening up to those people, it's when she's sleeping. And it's like she can't consciously actually open herself up at all. And it's all just a facade. It's all for a business. It's all this.
When she's sleeping, do you think she's actually saying those words, or it's just what's happening in her mind while she's in this like trance-like state?
I think it's just happening in her head, because the conversation she has with Bilt towards the end, when he like shows up in the kitchen and she starts saying like she's apologizing and she's like, I'm sorry, blah, blah. And when she wakes up, the keys are on the counter. So I don't see Bilt being the type of person that would leave if she was finally opening up. So I think she said even worse things maybe when she's like sleepwalking almost, or she just falls asleep. But like, yeah, I don't think she actually says it. I think she thinks she does, But then when she wakes up, she's like, I didn't do it.
It's almost as if the ego has shut off and her id is finally letting go and saying all the emotion that's behind it, but she can't actually say it out loud.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones was when she does that blackout moment while she's editing her speech. I thought that was so insane. And like she made all these corrections and some of her true feelings were kind of at the bottom about Bill and all this, but she doesn't remember doing it.
No.
Oh my gosh.
So good. Side note, what happens with Augie and Roderick, the only things that I think are of note, there's like two things, is he talks about getting the sapphire eyes and stuff for Madeline. It's like, he said something like he reached out across space and time with his pocketbook and plucked the eyes out of a ruler and now they're his. And it's just like, oh, that's so fucked up. These people with all this money, like, fuck you.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Willing to release a curse to in many ways. I mean, they've done it time and time again, ruin the final resting places of people that they've killed with their drugs or ancestors of places far away. Nothing stops them.
No, nothing is out of bounds for these people.
Nope.
At all. The second thing that we get is we find out a little bit about Arthur Pym and the transatlantic expedition and how he went to the North Pole. In the original story, he went to the South Pole. And this one, for some reason, they changed it to the North Pole. I'm not too sure why. Maybe because, I don't know, people like the North Pole more in modern times.
Santa Claus.
I don't know.
Ho,
but
ho, ho.
He talks about how there was the Ultima Thule, which is like a realm of beings. I'm not too sure what the meaning of this is. Did it actually happen? We have a being like Verna. It could be that's where she's from. Maybe he awoke in her. I don't think so because she's across space and time, but maybe she's from there and this is just a connection to like give her a place, because she does in the end say that she was there. She was on the ice and she saw him on the ship. So
it seems like she is a being who shows up when some of the most evil things are happening.
Well, she knows that she can get them to make a deal.
Right. And so she's attracted to that energy. And when she sees it, she's thinking, what can I get out of this? And with the Ushers, we see what she can do. In that specific thing with the expedition, she talks about them murdering people, about them raping people. And so that energy of evil brings her to places. And so, of course, she would have been there. And she stood on the ice. And for some reason, they were connected, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I think Pym and Verna have a lot of similarities. It's very interesting. In the last episode, I think we have more to talk about with them. But I did think it was interesting to name drop that because the Poe story is like one of his full novels with Arthur Pym. So I've never read it, but I'm assuming that like maybe he goes into more detail on that and we have to read it to actually find out what this means. But the only other thing that I'll talk about with Augie and Roderick is each time when they're talking, a lot of times the kid that's dying in that episode will show themselves to him. This one with the explosion of glass behind Roderick got me. That scared the shit out of me. I did not expect that. Mwah. Perfection.
Yes. These final episodes, like we were saying, everything ramped up. Even the jump scares were just out of control. And seeing Roderick, who has been so stoic throughout all of this, falling apart, it's kind of delicious to see, and how afraid he is of who's going to show themselves next. They're coming to me. I don't want to see them like this.
Yeah, yeah. The lead up to Tamerlane's demise is amazing. The use of mirrors in the final scenes is so freaking cool. We know that Mike Flanagan likes mirrors with Oculus. He's no stranger to them. I did not spot the Oculus mirror in this one. A lot of times he likes to put them in his series. So I'll have to see if you know, listener, if you found it, let us know.
Point it out, please.
Yeah, I would like to know because that mirror is a great cameo. I want to see it.
One of the questions I have is, so during the press conference, we see that she's trying to introduce her gold bug box. And what's really being shown on screen is almost like hidden camera footage of her and Bill in the bedroom with the girl that they hired. Do you think the people were really seeing that, or that was just in her mind?
That was 100% in her mind, but it has one of my favorite quotes in this entire series. And it's really hard to watch her losing her mind, but it was so well done. And holy shit, I can't wait to see this actor in more Mike Flanagan things. But my favorite part of that scene and the quote is, "Lick her asshole while she reads a book for all I care." It is so fucking funny. And I love it. And then that's when she loses it, right? She's like, people are hearing this, but they never did. Because when she looks at the assistant, she's like putting the stuff on her face.
Yeah.
If that was happening on the screen behind me, I'd be 100% attention on that. But this scene where she's seeing Verna and she, is completely losing it. And like, she can't remember what she's supposed to say. And Bill was the one that was supposed to do this. It's all falling apart, right? This thing that she was leading up to for this launch. Madeline really said, you need to kill this. You're fine. You got this. You're like the best one out of everybody because I see myself in you. She's fucking losing it. But what? I didn't expect this to be as funny as it was and sad. She sees Verna behind Juno. And prior in this episode, Juno and Tamerlane actually have a moment. She goes to the house and Juno's like, I thought with a big family, at least I'd have somebody, I'm alone in this house. I never see anybody. It's so big. And Tamerlane's like, yeah, Roderick does that to me too. Like he won't answer his phone. I'm like, oh, she's opening up a little bit. But Juno is sitting right in front of where she sees Verna. And Juno thinks that she's yelling at her because Tamerlane's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And Juno's like, I'm just really proud of you.
And then, of course, Tamerlane throws the mic stand into the audience and clobbers poor little bird like Juno in the face. And she goes right over. And then in this scene, Aunt Madeline is like running across the room. I'm like, oh, she's going to help Juno. No, she sees Verna and she tries to grab Verna, who turns into ash and dust. But Juno is just like laid out on the floor. It was so sad.
It was very hard to watch, but like, I'm sorry, it was really funny. Like I at first I really laughed and then I was like, oh, I hope she's not dead. Like,
yeah, I mean, she's
frail.
She's a very fragile body.
She has 2,000 milligrams of ligodome in her.
Yeah, I thought her skull was going to be smashed in, but luckily it wasn't.
But the final moments with her, right, are really, really, really cool. One, I will say, stop fucking smashing mirrors. Like, you already stepped on glass in like the first 5. Please, for the love of God, stop smashing mirrors because you're only hurting yourself at this point. I get that she's going mad, but like, come on. Like,
she's just losing it. Yeah. I mean, that's really the bottom line. And watching her descent into this madness was just like mesmerizing to see. I think another question we need to ask is, why do they have so many mirrors in their house?
I think it's like because all she cares about is how people see her, right? And I think it's really poetic that her demise is her own reflection, is her. And I don't know, hats off, Verna. Good job.
That was a good one. That was good. It was interesting because in reading the Gold Bug story by Poe, the only really thing that I can see is that obviously there is a gold bug that is discovered in this story and it leads them to treasure. But this as a side note, is where the first use of the word cryptographer was used. So this actually ends up being about a code that they have to uncover to find where the treasure is. So, I mean, other than the fact that there's a gold scarab, I think this was maybe the one that they took a little bit of leniency or the most artistic interpretation of what the Gold Bug story was about.
I mean, I think that, this was the thing that was going to give her back, right? So it's like, it makes sense that like, that's the only thing you're connected to. I mean, I was hoping, because you read it, I didn't read it. I read that one so long ago, and I don't think I really liked it. I thought it was rather boring.
It is pretty boring.
Okay.
It also has a really horrible the black character is fantastic, but it's just a complete horrible depiction of what a black person from that time would be like. So,
well, okay. So if you've never read Poe before and you start reading him because of this, there's incredibly racist and misogynistic things in this. I'm not giving it a pass. It was made in the 1800s. Just prepare yourself.
Yeah, I really couldn't read it. Whenever they made that character speak, I would really not read it because it felt so horrific.
Right. It's not great.
No.
So, boo on that Poe.
Yeah.
But so I really like this. I like the final moment. I thought the slow-mo was so good. That giant piece of glass just going right into the side of her neck. Ugh.
Also, let's kind of see the nod to the bent neck lady that we got from Hill House.
Yeah.
Right? Because when he sees the ghost of Tamerlane, when he's talking to Dupin, her whole head goes to the side.
It's
our little Nell.
He had to do it. He had to remind us
He's
about
like,
Nell.
don't forget about her.
Yeah. One other thing of note in this one is that we find out that Verna made deals with Zuckerberg and Trump and other high profile people. So cool. It makes sense.
Yeah.
All I'm going to think is, okay, I can't wait for like the deal to be enacted. What are the terms of Verna's deal?
Where are the other ones? Let's go. What's going to happen to them?
Okay. So, yes, amazing death. I think the descent into madness was so good. Acting performances 10 out of 10. And we get some breadcrumbs into the 7th episode of what's possibly going to happen. We get Fraudrick not getting specialist care for his wife that is currently healing. And that directly leads us into episode 7.
Yeah, so episode 7 is The Pit and the Pendulum. Frederick's bender worsens as he is consumed by the presumed infidelity of his wife. He continues to torture his recovering spouse, first with nightshade and then with a pair of pliers. Lenore defies her father, freeing her mother from the hell she's been trapped in. The pendulum swings on the clock of Frederick's destiny and hacks away at his life, one arc at a time.
Ooh, 10 out of 10 summary. Ooh. I love that final line. Ooh, so good. Okay, this is probably my most hard to watch episode. I think really out of all of them, Fraudrick in the end, I think I said in the first part, I was like, he seems like kind of the nicest one and the family guy of them. I 100% take that back. I was fully wrong and I hate him and I wish he got a worse death than he actually did. We open with Morel seeing just images of their wedding photos everywhere in the room. It is terrifying. This dude is full on doing drugs, is going insane, and is so insecure and jealous. He doesn't even know what happened. And he's just like, you need to repent and you need to tell me you were wrong. But we'll move past this. But I need to make sure that you know what you did.
Well, let's also talk about the fact that if he actually spoke to his wife about what happened, he might have found out the truth. And he says he wants to know the truth and what really happened and why she did it. But yet he keeps giving her nightshade, which makes her unable to move or speak, but just exist and watch the world around her.
Being aware of this insane man's things while you can't do anything. And also you're like mush under those bandages is awful.
It's not even being trapped in the room, but she's trapped in her own body.
Yeah.
And is being tortured.
In that room.
Yes.
It's really awful. We also know in this episode that because of the people that are dying and because of everything that's happening, Fraudrick is the swing vote for the board, meaning that he's going to tell the board which way to vote for who, whatever. Swing vote. He is the swing vote, like a pendulum. See what they did there? It's very good.
Very smart. They really knew what they were doing with their words.
There is a scene where he's talking to Morel. I think it's the second time that we see them. And he talks about how this is something that his father had said to him, that if you don't want to be consistently cruel, you have to be sufficiently brutal. That is a psychotic way to think about things. How about you're just not cruel or brutal at all and use your words like an adult?
And, you know, Frederick as a character has never been able to truly assert himself and has always been seen as the, I don't know, shelter dog or the beaten puppy of the group. And when he gets a chance to assert himself, he doesn't know what he's doing and he completely loses it. Not to mention that he's constantly doing cocaine, which doesn't help matters at all.
I think I kept trying to figure out what the correlation was between baby Fraudrick and current Fraudrick. And we get some scenes where young Augie and young Roderick were talking and Freddie keeps like turning on the car and he's like annoying them, just being a child. And we see Roderick kind of act towards him like not nicely, like wanting him to just get out of the way and like get out of here because I can't concentrate. And it's not a nice way to act towards your kids, but I was trying to find the connection between that. And maybe it's just he kept getting pushed aside. Like he was wanting attention and he wanted to be involved, but he's a child. So what does he do? He just does his toy, and Roderick just pushed him away and he doesn't want anything to do with him. And so he acts out in the wrong and unhealthy ways, and that carried through to his adulthood, unfortunately.
Yeah, at first we thought he just had an addiction to bowling, but maybe that was his outlet for a while. But I do think that we see that same dynamic with adult Fraudrick and his father now, where his father is like, take care of this. I would have had it done. You're worthless.
Right.
And so here we are again, his whole life. All he wants is the adoration of his father, and all he's being told is that he'll never be anything like his father.
And he's just, it seems like he's emotionally not mature. Like he never developed to be able to like handle his emotions correctly.
It's a ponytail. It's the ponytail.
It was all pulled back.
It was all pulled back.
I'm not a fan of the ponytail.
Oh no. The second I saw it, I thought this is no good. This is no good.
But the scene of note with current Augie and Roderick is the terrible scene where he sees young Fraudrick and Annabelle Lee, and he holds Fraudrick, and it looks, I feel like these scenes are showing us that like in the end, he realizes that he should have just loved his kids the correct way, and he's holding his kid, and his kid goes in half, which was not a fun scene to see with the child, but it was jarring to see. And he also tells Augie that my children are here to make sure I tell their stories correctly. And it seems like anytime he's slipping almost, that the children shows themselves when he gets to that point to see, this is what you did to me. Because of you, doesn't matter how awful I am, your choices brought me here.
It does seem like there was some, a couple of footnotes to the deal that they made with Verna where he didn't realize that he would have to see and hear from his children about how they die and be haunted by them. You have to wonder, would that have changed it? But it feels like Verna knows that is there, that small print is there, and that he really should have paid more attention to what he was agreeing to.
Ugh. Leading up to Frederick's demise, he can't go out of this world.
I don't like this part.
Without doing something that is sufficiently brutal to the already healing and recovering Morel. And he takes her teeth out with pliers and puts them in an
Altoid
container. Like, what? I don't know why. Like, okay.
Curiously strong.
I mean, I guess he has to carry them around with him.
Is that product placement?
I hope not.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. It might. I mean, they had to get permission to use Altoids. Imagine getting the email from like the Altoid representative and they're like, we want to use your product, but we're going to put somebody's teeth in them. Is this cool? And the person's like, I love you. Yes.
Absolutely. Flanagan, Netflix, do it.
That's what I would do. I'd be like, yes, please.
Not even talking to anyone. Yes, done. Send the contract over. I'm very grateful that we didn't actually have to see him pulling out all of her teeth, but just enough of seeing him bring the pliers to her mouth was too much.
And the aftermath was not great.
No.
Yeah, it was awful. Soon after that, Lenore does find her mother and calls the cops.
Oh, let's talk about Lenore for a second. She's saying to her father, where are the specialists? You didn't do anything right. What are you doing? He's acting like a total jackass. The second he leaves, she's like, I'm getting a crowbar and I'm getting my mom out of this room.
Yeah.
Lenore truly is the star, the heart, the wonder, the baby of the family.
Yeah, I think in the conversation with Augie and Roderick himself says there was no good ushers except for Annabelle and Lenore. I agree.
100%.
100%. I agree.
And his actions destroyed both of them.
Yeah.
So our good friend Fraudrick has to go knock down the building where Perry had perished earlier in the season. And he's acting like a complete jackass. When he gets in there, he meets our good friend Verna, who is like, yeah, do a little more blow. See what happens.
I love that the Nightshade finally came back into play and came in to bite him in the ass. I love that.
To slice him across the stomach.
I thought this is probably one of the more expensive deaths that they probably had to do because there was explosions and also a lot of CGI to make this pendulum swing. But man, was this so satisfying. This was one of the first deaths, or only deaths in this, where I was just so happy it was happening. For him to be fully aware and not being able to do anything while this pendulum slowly makes its way to start slicing him. And Verna the whole time is just like, I didn't have to do it this way, but I know what you did and you do deserve it. And I love the scene where it shows that like when he was on that call and he kind of like goes out of it a little bit, Morel saw Verna.
Nurse Verna.
Telling him, like made him put the nightshade in his bag of blow. Ugh, so good.
Yeah, I love it. And this one is very much related to the death in the pit in the pendulum. The story from Poe is actually about a prisoner of the Inquisition who is put in a cell where he finds out it's dark in the cell and there's a pit in the middle of it, so he could fall to his death in the pit. Later on, he's strapped to a board and there is a scythe coming down. At the end of it, actually, he is saved, but our good friend Fraudrick is not saved in this. And actually, it's quite the slow burn where he is then trapped in his own body, watching himself be cut in half.
Loved it. I wanted to see a few more slices, like fully cut in half would have been great.
Agreed.
I would have loved that. Some other things of note just for the end so that we know kind of where it's leading is Madeline wants to make it AI consciousness to pretty much make immortality. She wants to be able to like have an AI learn somebody and then after death be able to still be them. And we know who that is in the end, and it's very sad. Another thing is the freaking relationship between Juno and Roderick comes to like this disgusting, abusive, nasty head in this when they have that conversation. And she finally is just like, I don't like what's happening. You're an awful person. I want to be done with this. Like, you don't give a shit about anything else. And Roderick is like, oh yeah, no, it's not addictive, but like you've been on it for this long. You have this much in you and it's going to be the worst 3 years of your life to get off of it. You know what she did? She's like, that's worth it. Instead of being with you for life, that is worth it. And I'm like, get it, Juno. You have this big thing on your head. You just got smacked in the face and you did a mic drop.
Heck yeah. I think for Juno, she's realizing that all she is basically a lab rat for Roderick. She is someone he can finally go like, yeah, look, we killed millions of people with Ligadone, but this one person is still alive. And for her, that's not enough. And the fear of pain, it's not enough. And again, that is a total, counterbalance to Roderick, who any type of pain will stop him from moving forward. He wants to be as comfortable as possible.
Oh, yeah. He wants to get rid of pain, but that's not what he actually did. And it's impossible to get rid of pain. Mm-hmm. I really liked that Verna told Fraudrick that, you know what? You would have been a dentist. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's fucked up. That's real fucked up.
And then she sings Ironic by Alanis Morissette.
You know what? I didn't mention it, and I meant to mention it, but during Vic's episode, Total Eclipse of the Heart was the perfect song to play in the background. She also says that Roderick would have been a poet because he's very good at writing. And I love that they did the City in the Sea poem in this one. It's just, it's so good. The final, 2 episodes were very well done.
Mm-hmm. They were very Poe-esque. They had full on poems in it, which was fantastic.
Madeline gives Roderick the Ligadome to kill himself, and he does. But Verna said, no, and revives him, leading us to the last episode of the fall of the House of Usher.
Episode 8, titled The Raven. Young Roderick and Madeline seal their fate brick by brick, and the buried secret of how they became the heads of Fortunato is revealed. Present Roderick tells the tale of the texts, and Madeline struggles to see her way out of the basement. The Raven takes her final dues, and we shall hear of the Ushers nevermore.
Ooh, Poe references.
Caca, caca.
Is that a raven?
No, is a crow. What's caca?
I don't know.
What does a raven sound like?
I thought that was a crow.
Raven goes, Raven.
No.
They're like Pokemon.
They were like, nevermore.
Nevermore. Nevermore. Nevermore.
I don't know why you sound like... Is something in the Wizard of Oz sound like that? I don't know. It sounds like it.
I'm just a master of voices, apparently. Okay, listen. One thing that we have to talk about, all right, which is just driving me crazy, is the tale of Madeline's bangs.
What?
What is the deal with the bangs?
I don't know.
Right? She's wearing these power bangs throughout the entire series, and then she whips them off in one fell swoop, and then she's bangless.
Yeah, because whenever she means business, she takes the bangs off so that way nothing's in her eyes. And she...
See, I thought that they were her business bangs, and she was hiding behind them. But when she realizes that Verna is real, she goes back to her former self with the middle part.
That makes more sense.
But it was just so bizarre. Like, I was expecting a full wig reveal. I thought an entire wig was coming off, and it was just her bangs.
I love that part. She's like adjusting it, and I'm like, oh, thank God. It was supposed to not look like a great wig. And then she just takes off bangs, and I'm like, oh, it still doesn't look great.
The bump it is still there. It's still high in the back.
But I will say, Mary McDonald, phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this was her episode to really shine, and she absolutely killed it. And Willa Fitzgerald, who plays the younger...
Killed it.
Yeah. Who plays the younger versions. It's just so good. So good. I love that in this episode, we get Verna and Madeline coming face to face. And Verna's like, you tried to loophole me and it's just not going to work. I was very confused on how Madeline was able to snap Verna's neck so quickly and easily.
Like a don.
I thought it was like some deal, like she got superpowers for some reason, but I was like, oh, I guess it was just for shock value.
Yeah, I think that Verna as this being allows you to act out whatever it is you want against her, but nothing can really hurt her. And so she's like, I'll give them this moment to have peace of mind where she can snap my neck, but it's not real.
I feel like Verna does have some respect for her Cleopatra, though. Like she really respects Madeline for who she is and that she's like, gives no shits and she's like the brains of everything, especially as a woman like in the 70s and everything and coming up to that. I think Verna does have some respect for her, but ultimately doesn't give a shit because you made the deal.
There is that conversation in one of the earlier episodes between Madeline and Griswold, where he basically is telling her that a woman is only good for two things, being a secretary and having sex with. And so she needs to use Roderick in order to come to power because we know that Madeline is the brains behind everything. And so it is shocking to see her coerce her brother into taking the pills to kill himself. But when you really think about it, she was always using him because she knew she needed him to get ahead.
I think she also felt like that was going to stop it from happening.
Right.
Because she was like, we need you to be a hero. We need you to do this thing. It's going to stop everything. Of course it's not, though. Like, I mean, Verna is like, no, that's not how this works. There's still more ushers to kill. Like,
yeah, a deal is a deal, baby.
Right. So fucked up. I mean, it's just like your twin sister being like, here, you know, like we're
take your pills, drink your drinky drink. I love you. Goodbye.
In this episode, we finally found out what happened to Annabelle, or at least something, right? So we get a scene with Roderick. This is from the first episode, right? When he goes out of the funeral and he falls on the floor and then he sees the raven above him. But prior to that, we find out that he saw Annabelle and he has a conversation with her. The monologue of this woman is probably one of the best ones of this series. It's the poverty of you monologue. And she tells him how you took the children away. And when they came back, there was nothing left of them, even though they had everything they wanted. It's so incredibly sad.
Yeah, he siphoned the good out of them. He managed to have such a strong hold on them that they lost any sense of the goodness of their mother. And when she saw them that last time, she knew it was too late.
And I wasn't sure. It's never said in this episode of exactly what happens to Annabelle. Roderick recites the rest of the Annabelle Lee poem, and it talks about how the wind came from the cloud and took my Annabelle Lee, and now I sit by blah, blah, blah. We see when she turns around when she's walking to her kids' coffins that there's a big hole in the back of her head. And I wasn't really sure what that meant, but you pointed out that it was probably suicide, and that's very sad.
Yes, it seemed like once she knew that he stole her children from her, she went into a depression and took her own life. And what I took from that is that maybe she put a gun in her mouth and pulled the trigger.
It's so very sad, though. I don't like that. Like, of course, the good people never make it out of frickin' Flanagan thing. The past of what we see when Annabelle and Roderick were last together, and we find out that Roderick double-crossed Augie the whole time because Madeline and Roderick were planning this, which was real fucked up to not even include Annabelle, and he didn't do it because he knew she wouldn't like it. And ultimately, that's why they got separated, which I liked, that he didn't kill her, right? That she left him on her own. She was like, you're not good. I'm done with this. 100% applause for her. I think that was a very smart thing for her to do. But we see what ultimately happened to Griswold, and I loved it. I thought it was so fucking good. I didn't care how long that whole scene was. I thought it was very, very good.
It was pretty much the story of the Cask of Amontillado, right? So we have our main character taking Fortunato to his wine cellar, getting him there with the chance of getting to taste the Amontillado liquor. And he just ends up bricking him up behind a wall. And that's the end of him. He's even dressed as a jester. He has the bells. And so that scene of watching them just so confident in what they're doing, of getting rid of him, it was really interesting to me. One of the things I question the most is, when did Roderick turn?
He was always that way.
But he just had a better way of hiding it?
I think so. I mean, if you look at, the whole time, even when they're kids, he went along with everything that Madeline said without questioning anything. It's not really until later that we see that he tries to take the reins on some of the stuff or is questioning her. But growing up and getting to that point, until he was able to actually have that power, Madeline was just being able to just poison him this entire time, because we saw him being so loving and really wanting to help Augie, and he got all those documents, he made copies of them, and for him to be in front of that room and just be like, he was just harassing me, and I thought if I did this that he would stop. It's awful. Like, he did change really quickly, but I think he was always that way, because he was laying those bricks with a smile on his face.
Well, exactly. I kept waiting for him to show some bit of remorse for what they were doing. But as it was going on, he was becoming more and more almost at ease.
Who he was.
With it.
Yeah. I loved that Madeline used the thing that Griswold said that women are only good for to actually enact her revenge. Mm-hmm. Because he said, don't fuck with me, fuck me. And it was disgusting. It was probably one of the most disgusting things I've heard on TV, talking to a woman. But I love that in the end, she put on that brick, you are small. And that's the last thing that he's going to see. It's
also very scary about how easily someone can poison you. And they pour 3 glasses and he automatically downs his. And then Roderick's like, I'm going to take a leak. And she's like, I'm going to savor it. I'm like, and that's how you poison the whole bottle, but don't drink it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I'll be back. I'm going to carry it with me.
Oh, yikes.
I also like that she was like, I knew he wasn't going to know what it was. It was just sherry. It wasn't this freaking expensive thing. He's such a faker. I'm like, it's kind of true. That's why we hear the bells, right? We hear the bells behind the wall is because that's where they buried him. And they knew that they would be able to get the board to make Roderick. I keep getting Fraudrick and Roderick confused, but Roderick in position of power because he saved Fortunato because he turned on the DAs. It's just ultimately, I think, is such a cool plan. And it unfortunately makes sense. I could see something like that happening in today's world, but these people are just fucking awful.
I think that they obviously have more of their father in them than their mother.
Right.
And so that evil seed has always been growing inside of them. That man that cast them to the curb, the man that didn't want to acknowledge that they exist, they have become him in the worst way possible. And so they continue putting evil out into the world. And we see that they're willing to do anything to get that power.
And they meet Verna. Mm-hmm. This is where it brings us to Verna and their deal. The way she put the deal, why not? The deal is they're never going to be caught or convicted for any crimes that they do until the payment is due. Why not? You know what I mean? It's like, you're going to have everything that you want. But I did really like that Verna was like, this is what's going to happen. Like, your whole bloodline is going to have to pay for this deal. And they're like, okay.
Yeah, well, we see the true evil of Roderick in this situation because Madeline says, I don't have any kids. So this is ultimately up to him. And he's already made his decision. He's like, absolutely, this is what we're doing. And we see throughout their lives, Madeline never has children because she knows the decision that they made would kill those children. And then on the other hand, we have Roderick who keeps having kids and doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And so it's just looking at that illustration of how truly evil he is, that he doesn't care what his actions do and what positions is going to put other people in. As long as he is happy, that's all that matters.
I'm curious if Madeline to some degree, like, thought that she was fine. Like, oh, you can't really get payment for anything if I don't have anything to give you payment for. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, she doesn't care about her family to some degree, like her extended family. She's just like, you kept making bastards, and I did love somebody once, but it didn't work out. And here I am. Good for her, but like, not good for her because ultimately Roderick is the one that gets the payment on her, which is real fucked up. Like, I honestly, part of me doesn't understand why he did it to her.
I think because she got him to kill himself. Because what it seemed to me was the promise that they were going to do it together, and she just let him kill himself. And so she was hoping to survive. That
makes sense. Because Verna said, when Madeline was like, you know, I don't have kids or whatever, he has kids. And she's like, no, in this world together, out this world together. It's going to be both of you. Mm-hmm. It's fucked up, man. Mm-hmm. I don't really like this. One of the scenes that I do want to point out is Pym and Verna meeting, and she actually offers him a deal, but not before he goes full Pym Reaper and kills her, wraps her up in like 2 seconds. He's done this
before
many times. It's insane. But I love seeing him work because I'm like, this guy's terrifying. Mark Hamill, phenomenal in the series. I think he came in, did what he needed to do, and swooped right out. But he's going to be remembered for his role in this. I thought it was actually kind of incredibly sad that when she offers him the deal, because she's like, when they go down, you're going to go down too. You don't think Vic has a file on you. You don't think that this person's going to show that file to this, but I can stop that if you make a deal with me. And he doesn't take it because he doesn't have anything for collateral. Mm-hmm. It's kind of sad because he's nothing without them.
Right, exactly. And so he's like, I'll see what happens. I do think that, again, we have her toying with the person. It's very much the same of when Madeline broke her neck. She lets him believe that he got her, and she watches him wrap her up like a Christmas present, and she's like clapping for him. She's like, wow, that was spectacular.
She appreciates the work.
Now come take a seat.
Yeah.
I'm really going to tell you what's going on.
Both of them, after they killed her, they both were like, okay, yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'll sit. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and I love now we're seeing Verna, I feel like in her, Raven form, right? She has like that leather jacket on, the tulle skirt, the hair is slicked back. It's like, this is who she really is.
She's the Raven.
She's the Raven.
I loved the shot and the visual and the scene of when Roderick is in his building towards the end and he drove to his office without shoes on, and all his kids are there at the table and Verna's at the head of the table. And it's such a visual, right? It's like, it's in your face. It's showing Roderick like, this is the deal that you made. And now you have nothing. And we get one of the coolest scenes in this of all of the bodies of the people that he killed because of his drug falling from the sky. The strobe light effect where you couldn't really see them until the lightning hit. Oh, so cool. Every window scene in this building has been 10 out of 10.
Yes, and the bodies are just piling and piling and piling up and filling the streets of the city below and on top of the buildings. It's everywhere. And this is what he's done. This is your legacy. You've killed your own children. You've killed the world. And now here you are with nothing left.
And she appreciates it. She's like, you have a body count that is impressive, more than I have. Mm-hmm. And that's terrifying to think about. But he's killed hundreds, if not millions of people. Absolutely insane. Do we talk about Lenore now? I don't want to, but do we?
If there was any hope we had for some good surviving this series, it was in Lenore, who was always strong and always good throughout and was able to see the evil things that were happening to her family. And again, it's that same thing of if a person is trying to stop an usher from getting what they want, they ultimately have to pay for it.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, Lenore's death certificate was signed from the moment she was born. And we do have to see her go down.
Ugh, but not without calling Pym a fucking ghoul.
I gay finger waved when she said that. I was like, yes, because I thought he was going to do his Pym thing again, right?
He tried.
We see him doing it with Leo's boyfriend, where this is what you're going to say, this is how you're going to deliver it.
And he does it.
And he does it. And so you think that Lenore is going to do it. And Lenore is just like, get the fuck out of my face, you piece of shit.
And I love that she goes back to the cops and she's like, I have another statement to make. And I'm like, yes. And she is the one that was supposed to help this. And I think both of us, up until the moment of her death, was like, she's fine. Like, we just assumed that it was just going to be that generation.
Right.
But it's the bloodline. It's the whole bloodline. And the moment that Verna appears to Lenore is so incredibly sweet. It's sad, but she says that she hates that she has to do this. And she let her go out so peacefully, but not without knowing that because of you, you've saved millions of lives because you helped your mother. And it was so incredibly sweet. And these are like the things, right, that even though in the most dark and grossest things that happen in these series, that they find a way to show, I'm sorry this happened, but because this happened, so much good came from it. And it's that balance of things. It's sad, but, good for morale.
Yes. And that's the interesting thing about the character of Werner, of whatever this being is are they evil or are they just a mastermind and they are a manipulator, but they're able to see that this person in front of me is good and I will let them go out peacefully. I won't be evil and torture them like the others. So this being is just so perplexing in going, what is your deal?
Well, I think she's such a complex character, right? That even with Pym isn't the greatest person, but like she didn't make him take a deal. Like she let him go. He was just like, no, I don't have anything to give you. And she's like, okay, bye. And we also see there's like a moment of niceness with her with Perry when she's talking to him and she's like, we could have had a lot of fun. Unfortunately, you're consequential because tonight's a consequence. Like, I wish it didn't have to be this way. She probably didn't have to kill him that way. Like, it was an awful way to go. But I feel like there is something in her where it's like, I know you didn't make the deal, but this person did. So like, I have to do it. And I think there's something to be said of like, does she have to do these things or does she like to do these things? Like get the deals, right? She goes after people that are awful, but like, does she have to do it or does she like to do it? Is that how she feeds? I don't know.
She feeds off it. Yeah. In some way it's almost like, kind of like, wasn't there like with Stephen King's It, he feeds off the fear.
Right.
Right. It's that same thing of an evil being need fear and horrible things in order to survive and keep going.
Yeah.
That's our Verna.
Yeah. I do like that. I think Verna in this episode says that every usher will take a bow together. And one of the final scenes that we see in this is all of the tombstones of the ushers. Unfortunately, everybody's there, but she puts everything on their tombstones.
Like a talisman.
Ugh, beautiful. Like these moments, fucking Mike Flanagan and co. I just can't. It's just, it ties it up so perfectly. And I love it.
Let's talk about Madeline's talisman that's put on top of her tombstone.
I keep forgetting about her.
Those gorgeous sapphires when we see Roderick turn the tables on his sister who tried to kill him just, probably moments earlier, a day ago. And he
probably that morning
mummifies her.
So incredibly awful. Takes her eyes out and puts those sapphires in its place.
Yes. And so she's just been pinballing down in the basement the entire conversation with Dupin.
Yeah.
Trying to find the stairs or something. I think he took her tongue too.
Yeah, it was not great.
He also had the tool to take her brain out through her nose, but I'm thinking that he didn't do it since she was still alive.
Or was she? Maybe he just couldn't get all of it.
Oh my gosh.
And her motor skills were the only
She was just like a chicken with its head cut off kind of situation.
But what do you think about the poetry of the poetry. I don't know. Poetry. Maybe he used it on my brain of Madeline doing exactly what her mother did and coming up from the ground and killing the man that caused all of this awfulness.
This so good. This is the true story of the fall of the House of Usher, right? The sister is buried in the basement and she comes up and she gets him.
But like, I remember in that story, it's not exactly clear on like why Roderick died. It was like his sister came up, right, in the story, and she just falls on him and they both die.
Well, they had buried her. They thought that she was dead, which is like so weird. So that's exactly it. You don't know what their relationship is and why he wanted her dead so badly.
But what I'm saying is I don't understand in that story of why Roderick died. He just fell on top of her. Maybe it's just that like 1800s writing where it's like implied that she stabbed him or choked him.
Or just ooky spooky.
Yeah.
Scared him to death.
He got a fright and he died.
He said, ha, ha. Yeah. Like that.
But freaking Augie seeing her come up from the basement, he's like, nope, no.
She was just swinging. She's like, I'm coming to get you. And Dupont was like, I'm going to go home to my husband. Bye, you guys.
But the final destruction of all of them and the house finally falling and seeing Verna on top of it, finally completing her task was just so satisfying.
I'm pretty sure I saw the Raven dab.
It did. Yes, she did. And then turned into Verna, then turned back into the Raven and flew off. Off to my next one.
Goodbye. Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's the fall of the House of Usher. Okay. Where do you put this in the Mike Flanagan rankingness? You said it was your favorite overall over Hill House.
I think so.
Wow.
Because when this one ended, I sat there speechless.
Okay. Sorry. I forgot of one thing.
What?
Going back a little bit, Juno.
Oh, yeah.
She got everything. Because she was still married to Roderick, she got everything and got clean and fuck yes.
She dissolved for Fortunato. She went to help people with addiction issues. I mean,
Morel and Juno need to team up. Abuse and addiction issues, and they're amazing people.
They change the world.
Change the world.
I mean, and it is, I guess there is that glimmer there of the story that throughout all the evil of these decades of this horrible family, some good did come from it, from the two people that were able to get away from them.
Yay.
Good job.
I love it. Okay, so back to your ranking. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, my ranking. Okay, so when this ended, I was speechless. And I think I looked over to you and I said, that was phenomenal. And I think because there was so much Poe material, right? Whereas Hill House, it's one story that he took from. Because there was so much Poe material, you really got to see his artistry of bringing it all together and weaving it all together with this whole family. So I think the base of it, the story, the actual writing of it felt incredibly strong to me. And I think, like you said, the crescendo of the series, how things became more scary and more disgusting as time went on. The pacing was great. I felt like this was, for me, the strongest out of them.
It's hard. Okay, so I think, this is really hard. I still think Hill House is top for me, mostly because it ticks all of the boxes for me, and like I just hold it so high, right? I think the way the story that story came together and connected had a more emotional feeling for me than this one, because I think in the end, I didn't give a shit about these people. I liked seeing that story, but like if I really had to rank them, I would say Hill House, House of Usher, and Midnight Mass are like number one for me. All three of those just really the top, because I think, like you said, in this one, he got to experiment with so many different stories and so many different types of characters and bring it all together. He kind of did that in Hill House, but it was more of a tight-knit family. So there's a lot more emotional stakes at play there. But this one, I think he pulled all of his strengths from all of his previous series and really put it on display. We got those Midnight Mass monologues. Mm-hmm. We got the family dynamic from Hill House. We got the gayness from Bly Manor.
Oh my God. So much queer content.
Yeah. But it was really phenomenal. And I think that he went out of his haunting Netflix with a bang. I think it's so good. 10 out of 10. You know, I think that in the beginning, I wasn't sure. By the end, I was completely sold and invested. Mwah.
Yeah, chef's kiss for sure. I think what edged it out over Hill House for me, and I'm not saying it's a distant first and second. I think it's the idea of, because in Hill House it was like bad things were happening to good people, whereas in this, bad things were happening to bad people.
I don't know. I think for me, I think the emotion of like, I was more emotionally invested in the Crane family than I was in the Ushers. I loved every second of both of them, but I think like the emotions that I felt because bad things kept happening to them, I was terrified. I was sad. I was crying. I was happy. In this one, I was just like, yeah, cut him in half.
Get him.
But like that feeling goes away so quickly.
Sure.
That's for me.
I do want to say that the jump scares did get better in this.
Yes.
And the final one of the jester just popping out and choking Roderick was so good.
It was terrifying.
It got me.
Yeah.
It got me. I was
Also,
like, shooketh.
Like, way to be terrifying at a New Year's Eve party. Jesus Christ, what a joke.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Very good. Let us know what your rankings are, who your favorite death was. I think both of us mutually, Tamerlane was probably our favorite one. Also, Vic was probably one of my favorite ones.
That one was too much for me.
That one was
Not the open chest.
just enough for me.
No, it's terrible.
But I'm very...
Was that the bedroom? Was she in the bedroom? Was she sleeping with the body?
No, I think she was on like a dresser.
In a bedroom.
Probably in a dresser.
I don't know.
So she was probably staring at it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeesh.
She went to sleep. She said, "Night, babe, love you." And she was like calling her all day when she knew she was dead. Hello.
Well, she's probably trying to cover her tracks.
Or she lost it.
Yeah. Also that. I think both. But let us know who your favorite death is. If you're listening to us on Spotify, just scroll down and we already have those questions there for you to fill out.
Let us know. We always love hearing from you.
But that's the end of the Fall of House Usher.
That was our 2-part coverage.
It's officially fell. It falled.
The house has officially fallen. 'Tis the end of the story of the Usher family.
All right. Well, until next Mike Flanagan thing on Prime, we'll see what it is.
Happy spooky season, y'all.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to A Bite Of. Artwork and editing by our own Noah. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at A Bite Of Pod, and on Facebook at A Bite Of. If you have any questions, recommendations, or just want to say hi, you can contact us on abiteofpod.com. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review to spread the word. See you next time on A Bite Of. Bye.